All right, let's dive in. This deep dive is all about something I think we all struggle with, and that's building vocabulary when we're learning a new language.
Absolutely. It's a common challenge.
It can be, but thankfully we have this incredible guide to help us out.
Yeah, this one really focuses on practical tips, right? Making it part of your everyday life.
Exactly. No more boring flashcards or endless lists.
That sounds promising. I'm always up for new approaches.
Me too. So let's jump right in. So this guide starts off strong with this idea of labeling your environment.
Okay, that sounds pretty self-explanatory.
It is, but don't dismiss it too quickly. We're literally talking about putting labels on things around your house, but in your target language.
Ah, I see where this is going. It's about that constant visual reminder.
Exactly. I'm a little skeptical though. Like, I see my coffee pot every morning, but it doesn't make me think of the word in, say, Spanish.
But that's where the guide dives into the science behind it. It's all about how our brains are wired. We naturally connect information with location, so when you label an object, you're creating this strong visual link.
Interesting. So my kitchen could basically become this giant vocabulary map.
Pretty much. It's like hacking your brain's spatial memory for better recall.
I actually love that idea. I can see myself getting carried away and labeling everything in sight.
I think that's the spirit. And the guide doesn't stop there. It also suggests incorporating vocabulary practice into your daily routine, particularly your morning routine.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this morning routine vocabulary strategy.
Well, think about it. How do kids learn language? They observe, they imitate, they connect words to actions.
Right, it's all about association.
Exactly. So this technique is about consciously associating everyday activities with their corresponding words in your target language.
So, like, if I'm learning German, I would say Zahnbürste every time I brush my teeth.
Precisely. It might feel silly at first.
Maybe a little, but I can see how that repetition would really help those words stick.
Exactly. You're basically turning everyday actions into mini language lessons.
Hmm.
And the best part, it's built into your day. You don't have to set aside extra time.
Okay, I'm sold on that one. I love how practical this guide is, but I'm guessing it goes beyond just our homes, right? What about the rest of our lives?
Oh, absolutely. There are so many creative ways to integrate language learning into your day, even when you're out and about.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, the guide specifically talks about shopping lists, cooking, and even getting dressed.
Okay, those sound pretty normal. I don't see the language learning element there.
Well, let's break it down. Imagine writing your shopping list, but you force yourself to think of each item in your target language.
Oh, okay. So instead of writing down milk, I'd write down leche if I were learning Spanish.
Exactly. You're actively engaging with the language, even if it's just a simple list.
And then at the store, I might even have to ask for something in Spanish if I can't find it. That's amazing.
Right. Real-world application. And it's the same with cooking and clothes. Think about naming ingredients, describing actions like chopping or stirring. With clothes, it could be colors, fabrics, styles.
Wow, I'm starting to realize just how much potential vocabulary there is all around us. It's like a language learning goldmine just waiting to be tapped.
Exactly. It's all about shifting our perspective and seeing those everyday activities through a language learning lens.
So it sounds like we're off to a great start. We've already uncovered some amazing techniques.
Oh, we're just getting warmed up. There's a whole world of innovative approaches waiting for us in this guide.
Speaking of innovative, we can't forget about the role of technology, right? We live in a digital age.
You're absolutely right. And the guide dedicates a whole section to tech-powered vocabulary acquisition.
Okay, color me intrigued. Is this where we get into those futuristic language learning gadgets?
Well, maybe not futuristic gadgets, but it does offer some brilliant strategies for using technology to your advantage.
I'm all ears. What kind of tech are we talking about?
They start by talking about language learning apps. But not just any apps. They recommend apps that use visual modules and spaced repetition.
Visual modules and spaced repetition. I have to admit, those terms sound a little jargony to me.
No worries. Visual modules are basically elements that use pictures, videos, or animations to help you learn. Think of it as adding a visual dimension to your learning.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. Visuals always help me remember things better. What about spaced repetition?
Spaced repetition is a technique where you review material at increasing intervals. So instead of cramming and forgetting, you're constantly reinforcing those memories.
Oh, that's clever. So it's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And by combining visual modules and spaced repetition, these apps create a powerful learning experience.
It sounds like they've really cracked the code on effective and engaging language learning.
They've definitely done their research. And it doesn't stop there. They also talk about something called digital labeling, which is a really cool twist on the traditional labeling technique.
Okay, I love a good twist. Tell me more.
Picture this. You take a photo of your desk, and then using an app, you digitally label all the objects in your target language.
Oh, that's brilliant. So it's like taking that labeling technique with you wherever you go.
Precisely. And the beauty of it is you could do it with pictures of anything. Your kitchen, your living room, even screenshots from your favorite TV shows.
That opens up a world of possibilities. What else? Is there more tech magic in this guide?
They even talk about voice recognition.
Wait, like talking to my phone, how does that help with language learning?
Well, the guide suggests changing your device's language and then using voice commands throughout your day.
So, like, if I want to set a timer, I'd have to do it in, say, French.
Exactly. You're constantly practicing speaking and listening, even if it's just for simple tasks.
I love that. It's like sneaking in language practice without even realizing it.
It's a sneaky but effective way to boost your fluency and pronunciation.
Okay, this guide is seriously blowing my mind. It's packed with so many creative and practical ideas.
I know, right? It's incredibly inspiring. But remember, while these techniques are amazing, they're just tools.
Right, tools we need to learn how to use effectively.
Exactly. It's time to put them to work and see what we can achieve.
Well, I'm feeling pumped and ready to dive into some serious language learning action.
Me too. Let's get to it. Welcome back. I'm really excited to dig deeper into some of these practical techniques and figure out how to make them stick.
Yeah, me too. We can't just have this toolbox of techniques, right? We need to know how to use them.
Exactly. It's all about application. So what really stood out to me in this guide is that repetition, consistency, they're key.
Okay, that makes sense. Practice makes perfect, right?
Absolutely. But they emphasize that it doesn't have to be boring. It's about finding ways to make that practice enjoyable.
Okay, I'm all for fun practice. Can you give us an example from the guide of how we could make practice more enjoyable?
Absolutely. So remember that shadowing technique we talked about earlier?
Oh, yeah, where you're basically mimicking a native speaker.
Exactly. Well, the guide takes it a step further and suggests shadowing not just individual words, but whole sentences from audio recordings.
Ooh, so instead of just saying libro, I could listen to a podcast in Spanish and try to repeat the sentences they're saying in real time.
Precisely. You're getting exposed to the natural rhythm and flow of the language, improving your pronunciation and comprehension all at once.
That's a cool idea. What about the sentence building technique? Any fun twists there?
Totally. They encourage you to get creative with sentence construction, ask questions about the objects, create negative sentences, even use different tenses.
So instead of just saying, the cat is on the table, I could say, is the cat on the table? Or, the cat was not on the table yesterday.
Exactly. It's like a playful way to engage with grammar and make it less intimidating.
I love that. What about making vocabulary stick long term?
That's where storytelling comes in. The guide is all about using memory association techniques to create narratives around new vocabulary.
Okay, tell me more about how storytelling can help make vocabulary stick.
Our brains are wired to remember things that have an emotional connection. So if you link a new word to a funny story or a vivid memory, it becomes much more memorable.
Oh, that makes sense. So if I'm learning the word umbrella in Italian, which is ombrello, I could make up a story about a clumsy penguin who always loses his umbrella.
Exactly. The more absurd or ridiculous, the better. It's about creating those mental hooks that help words stick.
That's such a fun way to learn vocabulary. I can definitely see myself using that technique. But let's shift gears a bit. What about tracking our progress?
Ah, yes. Tracking progress is key. It helps to stay motivated and see how far you've come.
For sure. So what does the guide say about that?
They highly recommend keeping a vocabulary journal. It's more than just a list of words. It's a record of your learning journey.
Okay, so what would I put in my vocabulary journal?
Besides the words themselves, you can add definitions, example sentences, even little sketches or doodles. It's a way to make it your own.
That's a really cool idea. I can see myself getting creative with that. What about if I need some extra motivation? What does the guide suggest?
If you're someone who thrives on structure, they recommend setting weekly challenges for yourself.
Weekly challenges, huh? I like the sound of that. Tell me more.
You pick a theme, like food or travel, and challenge yourself to learn a certain number of words related to that theme each week.
So this week, I could focus on learning Italian food words. I love it.
Exactly. And don't forget about self-testing along the way.
Self-testing. I have to admit, that part makes me a little nervous.
No need to be nervous. It's not about being perfect. It's about checking your understanding and identifying areas where you might need to focus more.
That makes sense. So it's more like a self-assessment tool rather than a test.
Precisely. You can use flashcards, online quizzes, or even just try describing things out loud in your target language.
I like those ideas. It's a good way to gauge how much I'm actually retaining. What about using our new skills out in the wild? Any tips for that?
Oh, absolutely. They dedicate a whole section to real-world application with tips for common situations like ordering food, navigating public transportation, or even asking for directions.
Okay, that's great. But what happens when I'm out there and I suddenly blank on a word?
It happens to the best of us. They encourage you to get creative. Try describing the object or action. Use gestures. Even draw a picture if you have to.
So basically, don't give up. Find a way to communicate.
Exactly. It's about remembering that communication is more than just words.
This whole guide is about being resourceful and adaptable, isn't it?
It really is. It's about empowering learners to take control of their learning journey and make it their own.
And speaking of making it our own, is there anything in this guide that surprised you or that you maybe disagreed with?
You know, I was a bit skeptical about the clothing vocabulary section at first. I mean, how much vocabulary can there really be about clothes?
I thought the same thing, but I have to say they made a good case for it.
They did. They talked about learning to describe colors, fabrics, styles, even cultural differences in clothing. It's more interesting than I expected.
For sure. It's like opening up a whole new world of descriptive language.
Exactly. Another thing that surprised me was their focus on technology, especially voice recognition practice.
Oh, yeah. I remember thinking, how is talking to my phone going to help me learn a language? But their reasoning actually makes a lot of sense.
It does. By changing your device language and using voice commands, you're constantly immersing yourself in the language, even if it's just for small tasks.
It's like turning those everyday moments into mini language lessons. Super clever.
It is, and it's a great example of how this guide encourages you to think outside the box and find creative ways to learn.
I'm so impressed with this guide. They really have thought of everything. But before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I'm curious, is there anything in this guide that you found particularly challenging, something that you think other learners might struggle with too?
That's a good question. You know, I think one area that could be a bit tricky for some people is the food preparation practice.
I can see that. It's easy to get overwhelmed if you're a beginner and trying to follow a recipe in another language.
Exactly. But the key is to start simple. Just like we discussed earlier, you can start by labeling ingredients, then describing actions, and gradually work your way up to more complex recipes.
It's all about those baby steps, right? Building confidence as you go.
Precisely. And don't forget to be patient with yourself. Learning a language takes time and effort.
It does. What about you? Was there anything you personally found challenging in this guide?
Honestly, I think the biggest challenge, for me at least, is going to be consistency. It's easy to get excited about new learning methods, but sticking with them long term can be tough.
I totally agree. It's like any good habit. It takes effort and discipline to make it a part of your routine.
Exactly. That's where I think the vocabulary journal and the weekly challenges could really come in handy. Having that structure can be a game changer. Absolutely. It's about setting yourself up for success and finding ways to stay motivated. And even on those days when you don't feel like studying, even just doing something small, like reviewing a few flashcards or labeling an object, can help keep the momentum going.
I love that. Every little bit counts. Well, I'm feeling super inspired by all these techniques. It's like this guide has given us a whole new toolbox for language learning.
I agree, and I think the best part is that it emphasizes that there's no one right way to learn. It's all about finding what works best for you.
Exactly. It's about embracing that individuality and making the journey your own.
All right, well, we've covered so much ground today. I think it's time to move on to the final part of our deep dive and see what final nuggets of wisdom we can extract from this incredible guide. Wow, we've really dug deep into this guide. What's the biggest takeaway for you?
You know, it really hit me that language learning, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
Yeah.
This guide makes that so clear. You're in the driver's seat.
It gives you all these tools, but you get to decide which ones to use. Exactly. Experiment. Find what works. Make it your own.
It's about making it fun, right? Not just some chore you have to do.
Totally. That's how it kicks. So, last challenge for our listeners.
Oh, I like challenges.
What's one object you see every day, like every single day?
Okay.
Label it in your target language.
Just one.
Start small. Maybe your coffee mug. Maybe your your front door even.
It's a little thing, but
That gets you going.
it could snowball from there. All these techniques, the journal, everything.
Who knows, maybe they'll end up labeling their whole house.
Well, listeners, that's our challenge to you.
It's a journey, remember that.
Ups and downs, and have fun along the way.
Absolutely.
Until next time, happy learning, everyone.